There is a portrait that hangs
in my grandmother's house.
that bleeds at night from the frame. Story written by nosleep user Darkly Gathers. My youngest cousin is the one who first found the portrait. He was exploring the house at night, as he often does when the family is gathered together, and he stumbled across it on one of his expeditions. The boy was frantic the next morning, wouldn't stop babbling about his discovery to everyone. Well, to us kids at least. He didn't tell the adults. I think he was afraid of getting into trouble. It's a massive house, and Grandma always told us not to wander around, especially on the upper floors. He's been a bullshitter all his life, Mason, so you'll forgive me for initially disregarding his claims as nonsense. I just rolled my eyes and went back to my book. My sister and my cousin were playing Mario Kart and barely even registered him at all. But he kept insisting, kept waving around his hands and getting all up in our faces. He swore on his life, that he was telling the truth. And the doubt started to set in. I admit, I was curious. We all were, a little. So, after an impassioned plea for support, we caved. And to Mason's glee, we came up with a plan. A plan that would involve waiting until all the grown-ups had gone to sleep, and then sneaking out of our rooms to find the supposed bleeding portrait. So, this is where we find ourselves now. My sister and I, flashlights in hands, sneaking out of our room and down the corridor to knock on our cousin's door. We should be okay. The adults' rooms are on the opposite side of the house, but you never know who could be up and about. We don't need to knock in the end. The door is slightly ajar, and with a quiet push and a soft creak, we head on in to reveal the boys all ready and waiting for us. Mason is whispering excitedly to his brother, who tries and fails to hush him repeatedly. "Okay, guys," Mason says to us. "Are you ready? Flashlights off for now. Come on, let's go!" And he pulls open his door and sneaks off into the dark. Exchanging glances, we click off our lights and follow. Our grandma's house is so big that there are multiple sets of stairs for each floor, and we creep towards the back of the house now, to a set of stairs that's rarely used. Less chance of bumping into one of our parents or aunts or uncles. I can hear the faint sounds of snoring echo from down the hall. The staircase seems much taller at night, and we look up at it nervously, hearts pounding with a thrill of doing something that you're not supposed to, beneath the added excitement and mystery of the veil of darkness. Heavy, deep-colored steps ascend into the gloom. The infamous forbidden floors lie above. "I'm scared, Charlotte," my sister whispers to me, clutching my sleeve, but I shush her and tussle her hair. Mason tiptoes to the lowest of the steps, and up he climbs. He's done this before, supposedly, but for us, this is a venture into the unknown. Up we go, slowly, carefully, step by shaky step. Molly, my sister, clutching tight to my hand, Mason leading the way, and my other cousin, Ethan, close beside. The stairs lead us into a corridor of thick-shadowed and watchful furniture. Towering cupboards stand maliciously on either side as we make our way through it. Portraits of figures unknown stare down at us from their perches above. "Which one of them is the bleeding one, Mason?" I whisper. "None of these. We have to go a little deeper," he replies, so we pass the paintings by. There are no windows up here in this hidden section of the house, but the wind whistling beyond the walls is loud and close enough to send a secondhand shiver rippling right through me. The portraits stare down at me, with warning in their eyes. I look away. "Here, check it out," Mason whispers, and leads us abruptly to the right, into a long and narrow corridor with nothing on the walls at all. No windows, no doors, except for one, old and cracked at the very far end. "What the fuck, bro?" Ethan mutters, I smack his arm lightly for swearing. He winces, but speaks on. You came up to this place all by yourself? What's wrong with you? Mason only grins. I ain't no chicken, Ethan. That's all. Come on, this is the way. And he clicks on his flashlight as he leads us down the corridor. We do the same. The shadow that Mason casts is flickering and long, and shudders up the walls, distorted by the ceiling as he walks. The door, as we approach, is a dark, brown-black wood, but it's unlocked, so Mason tucks his flashlight under his arm, grabs the handle with both hands, and eases it open. We cringe in panic as the long and low creak reverberates through the walls, but we hear nothing else stir down below. We have the faintest hint of the wind outside, now almost imperceptible. So we head inside, one by one, into the room. The walls are black, windowless, and the room is full with wooden chairs, all stood upright, but facing in a myriad of directions, with no cohesion or order to their placement. Two identical dark wardrobes stand against the walls, one to my left, one to my right, and facing each other. And an old gas lamp sits on a little round table in the corner besides a collection of coasters and a battered matchbox. The far wall is bare but for a single item. A lone, framed portrait right in the center. A painting of a grimacing old woman. The shadows painted across her face make her wrinkles seem greater and deeper. This is the one, Mason says excitedly in a low voice, gently pushing aside the chairs as he makes his way across the room. Every step closer to that ghastly painting. I feel the dread within me grow. My sister clutches to me just a little tighter. Charlotte, she whispers, but her voice sounds as if it's coming from far away. Mason halts at the base of the portrait, looking up at it, and the rest of us stand behind him a few paces back. We stare at it in contemplative, cold silence. Then Mason swivels on the spot, loudly claps his hands, and the spell is broken. We jump back in fright. Fuck's sake, Mason! Ethan mutters. And I'm too rattled at this point to chastise him for it this time. I just let the fear wash over me and try to bring myself back into the moment. Weird, right? Mason asks, rhetorically, scratching his chin and turning back to the painting, casting his light across it. All by itself in this old room. It kinda looks like Grandma, don't you think? I chew my tongue. I study the grimacing old woman, lips pressed tight. It does look a bit like her, actually. Not identical, but similar enough for a resemblance. Maybe that's why she hid it away? 'Cause she was embarrassed by it and didn't want anyone to see it? Suggests Ethan. I don't know, I reply. Wouldn't she have just thrown it away if she didn't want anyone to see it? Why would she bother hanging it on a wall? She didn't even lock the door. Oh, the door was locked, replies Mason, matter-of-factly. And for reasons unknown to me, a wave of goosebumps shiver across my skin. What do you mean locked? Asks my little sister. He shrugs. Pretty self-explanatory. I had to pick the lock. Wasn't hard. I've been practicing. So, we're not even supposed to be in here at all then? I ask him, glancing back up to the painting. Maybe we should go. No, wait, look. I haven't even shown you the bleeding yet. That's why we're here. Mason steps closer to the painting and reaches out a hand to the wall, tracing his fingers across the surface just below the painting's frame. He pulls back and shines the flashlight over his skin. I squint as the light passes my field of vision, but lean closer, peering at his hand. His fingertips are marked with a sticky, dark substance, like sap or tar or blood, he whispers. Ethan clicks his tongue and shakes his head. That isn't blood, you dope. It's just wall residue or something. Wall residue? Mason replies. What the hell's wall residue? I sigh and look away, glancing back up to the horrible painting. I look at the old woman's eyes. The whites are visible above her irises. Her teeth, yellow and cracked, are stretched wide into a grin. Teeth, grin. I cry out in sudden alarm. A gasp of such genuine terror that the conversation in the room is silenced at once. Beads of sweat begin to form down my back. Guys, I whisper, struggling to get out the words. The woman in the painting, she wasn't smiling just a minute ago, right? You couldn't see her teeth? No, Ethan whispers back with a croak as we stare at the portrait. No, she wasn't. Guys, I think we need to go, I stammer, retreating backwards through the room, heart pounding and pulse racing feverishly as the chairs are pushed away, scraping across the wood. The others do likewise, and we bump back as a group against the door. It's closed now. I don't remember closing it behind us, and I can't find the handle. I scramble for it madly, fearful to take my eyes away from the painting, but unable to locate it. I am eventually forced to do so, and it isn't there. The handle is gone. Where is it? I hiss. Where is it? There! Cries Molly, pointing up. It's up there! And looking up, sure enough, the handle can be seen. It's moved, right at the very top of the door and well beyond our reach. The floor creaks. We spin around as one and face the portrait, flashlight beams cast upon it. But the portrait is empty. The frame holds nothing but a dark and unoccupied painted scene. And for a moment, there is silence. Silence that is broken by the sound of scuttling across the ceiling. I lift my beam and tilt my head to look above, and the light lands on an enormous millipede, the face of the woman from the painting, staring down at me. The face holds my gaze. It stretches into a wide grin. And then the nightmare moves, fast. Hundreds of quivering, knife-like legs rattling and scratching their way across the ceiling and down to the closest wall towards us. And I scream. We all do. Panic and chaos takes hold as we crash and clamber through the chairs, crying and shouting out loud for help. Ethan is slamming and kicking the door. Molly, where's Molly? She's scrambling over to the far corner. The nightmarish abomination from the portrait slithers and scuttles over and around the chairs, eyes wide, hissing as it approaches me. Stay back! I shriek, grabbing one of the chairs and holding it out in front of me as a weapon. My hand's shaking, but she's getting closer. Closer and closer. A chair, thrown by Ethan, flies across the room and strikes the millipede on the head. Her grin does not falter, but her eyes seem to grotesquely shift their placement in her face with the impact. The creature turns in a circle, scuttling back towards Ethan. Charlotte, think, what do I do? Molly has returned to the door. Mason is holding a chair steady at its base as she balances on another on top of it, desperately trying to climb up to reach the handle. Fuck! Ethan shouts as the millipede races towards him. He staggers back, wildly waving a chair in his hands, jabbing and slamming it against the creature's head. I do as Ethan had done. I grunt with effort as I hoist up another one of the many chairs, flinging it across the room where it smashes against the monster's back. One of its eyes rolls around in its socket to face me, and it changes direction once again. I need to think, but I can't. I can't think. Molly and Mason struggle to reach the handle. A little more time. I just need a little more time. As I stumble backwards, my hip bumps up against the little table in the corner. I turn to it as the gaslight wobbles, and I grab it. Ethan! I shout. The painting! Can you bring down the portrait? Ethan nods and quickly pushes his way through the chairs as I haul open the door to the nearest wardrobe, banging the door shut behind me and closing it tightly closed as the millipede hisses and scratches hungrily on the outside. It gnaws and claws, gives up after a minute, and I hear it scuttle away through the chairs. I gather my courage and push the door open and jump back into the room. Ethan has managed to tear the portrait from the wall. I watch as he throws it to the floor.
Naughty children shouldn't enter locked rooms,
The monster hisses, her voice rough and warbled. Now what, Charlotte? He yells at me, running around in a circle and away from the creature. Stand clear! I'm going to destroy the portrait! I shout back. Maybe that'll stop it. Maybe that'll destroy the monster. Do it! He screams. As the millipede stops, it cracks the upper segments of its body around to stare at me, ever grinning as I flick the gaslight on. It steams and hisses, and in a shaking hand, I go to strike one of its matches. It snaps in two. Quick, Charlotte! Ethan cries out as the millipede approaches. It's a long room, but not that long. And I can see it get closer and closer out of the corner of my eye, the heavy scratchings and scuttlings of its legs getting louder and louder. I try lighting another, and mercifully, it catches. I bring it to the gas in a shaking hand, and it lights in an instant. Then, with all my might, I hurl the little lamp down onto the portrait. It explodes in a small but powerful burst of fire, and I have to shield my eyes for a moment with the blast of light. A high-pitched shriek rings out around the room as 100 flickering shadows are suddenly cast up all around. There's too much movement. I can't work out what's going on. And then the door of the room swings open. Molly has reached the handle and has pulled it tight, kicking her legs in the air as she brings the door around. And then she falls, and Mason catches her with a grunt. Come on, Charlotte! Ethan shouts at me. I swivel my head from side to side, looking for the monster, but I can't see it. It has vanished. So, with one last look at the burning portrait, I run through the room, joining the others and sprinting back out to the corridor, slamming the door tight shut behind us. Back through the dark corridor as we run, slamming into furniture as we do, scrambling back down the stairs to safety. And at the bottom, a shadowed figure awaits. We scream and collapse into a heap, sprawling into a pile at the bottom as the figure becomes clear. Grandma. What in God's name are you kids doing out of bed? She asks, adjusting her glasses. Didn't I tell you not to go up to that floor? We babble incoherently over each other, all speaking at once until she calms us down. And, when she has, we explain what we saw. We come clean. We tell her that we found the painting, and we tell her where we found it, and we tell her that we were attacked by a monster. We get to the point where I hid in the wardrobe, and she interrupts. Oh goodness me, she says shakily, drawing us into a hug. Mason, that was a very foolish thing you did, unlocking the door like that. It's dangerous, that room. Very dangerous indeed. It was locked for a good reason. And you must promise me to never, ever go up to that room again. Of course, Grandma, I reply. We all do. Never again. I'm just so glad that you're safe, she murmurs. You're safe now, I promise you. But we need to go back up, and we need to lock the door, stammers Mason. Just to be sure. Oh, you don't need to worry about that, says Grandma. Even if the door were left wide open, she cannot leave the room. That is what the portrait is for. There is a pause. What do you mean? I ask her. The portrait keeps her bound to the room, so everything is just fine, says Grandma. Just as long as the portrait remains hung on the wall, then she cannot leave the room. I look to Ethan, and my blood runs cold. Grandma adjusts her glasses. Why? You didn't damage the portrait, did you?